I'm Chris Newton, creator of Feed, the Vampire Mythos RPG. In 10-Minute Mythos, I prove the endless possibilities of vampire role-playing by taking one random inspiration and using it to sketch out an original vampire mythos, all in 10 minutes. No prep, no script, just one gamer who loves a good vampire story. Wish me luck. Welcome to 10-Minute Mythos. Lately, I have been reading a bit of this journal, the Allen Review, which is about young adult literature, and so it made me think about using Feed with young adults, both to simulate young adult literature, which obviously is no stranger to the vampire subgenre, and also to actually play with young adults. So I found a young adult character generator. You can find this at selfpublishingteam.com/caregen, CHARGEN,
like jargon.
Right, /YA. So I've already generated a character, but I haven't looked at him or her yet. So we're going to do that and then use that as a basis to come up with a young adult story. This, by the way, is Katrina, not herself a young adult in the literary sense, but a librarian who's familiar with young adult literature and can help me out. So the character who we are building around is Daniel. He is male. He is 17 or 18. He is
in the 12th grade.
In the 12th grade. He is a jock. He is competitive, motivated, and adventurous.
Dum-ba-dum.
And he has a really big family. He has brown hair, green eyes, and he's curvy. So he's a curvy jock from a big family. Very adventurous, so he's good as our protagonist. So let's see, what can we do with this character? Putting him in a vampire story. He's our protagonist, and this is Feed, so he's going to be a vampire himself. At least at some point in the story. He doesn't necessarily have to start that way.
Well, he could be outdoors adventurous. That might... curvy. Curvy is fun. We could have something like maybe he does swimming, like a lot of ocean water, cold water swimming, where being a little more of the curvy persuasion would actually be good for the whole not freezing and buoyancy thing.
Oh, yeah.
And having a big family would be a nice way to escape your big giant family to go swimming in cold waters. And maybe in one of these adventures he encounters a supernatural creature that turns him into a vampire.
Yeah, I can see that. So he is, so cold water swimmer, I like that. Escaping the family, that's an interesting dynamic, and that's something that maybe we could tie in thematically. I think that, you have to decide how you're going to make vampirism specifically interesting in this story. And we've got the giant family as the unique trait that's sort of like supposed to set this character apart. So I like the idea that maybe he's involved in sports to escape the family or to somehow like set himself apart.
Also to distinguish himself. And
right.
I mean, he's 17, 18. In a big family, he's probably one of the older kids. So he's probably done a lot of babysitting and likes having an activity that lets him get some time by himself. And then finds himself in the precarious position of needing to really isolate himself because he's a monster. And that could be an interesting conflict there where he had, 17, 18, oh gosh, my younger siblings. And then, oh god, I could kill my younger siblings. That could be interesting.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. What could be an interesting thing to do here too, because we've got this big family and we want to explore the character in those terms, is if we created a strain, we create a form of vampirism where he's being sort of like, he's the single vampire offspring of some other vampire, and this makes him really important. Or perhaps his case emerges in a way that makes other vampires care a lot about him. But basically, while he is just like one of the kids, like maybe he has one or two older siblings and then lots of younger siblings at home, and so he's kind of lost in the mix. When he becomes a vampire, he becomes the focal point of attention for like lots of important vampires, in particular like maybe the one who turned him, who's like, you are my link to the future. Like you are now going to live for centuries. I either won't or can't, because of the nature of the strain, create another vampire. So it's all riding on you. Like my legacy is you. I will focus completely on you. Like I've got all this money and stuff, and so
that could be really neat.
So now he's got this thing where like in one half of his life, the human half, he's like anonymous and kind of lost in the mix, but yet he's got a lot of people depending on him. And the other half is this guy telling him, nobody else matters. Your human family doesn't matter. Your human life doesn't matter. Other people don't matter.
And that's
everything I've done is riding on you, and I care about you a lot.
And that's very YA literature, because you always have your super special snowflake protagonist, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. and they end up in a situation where something really does ride on them, or something about them is really important to a larger situation that they then have to negotiate. That could be really cool. And it could, we could have some interesting vampire politics. You could have this, the vampire that creates him, who's like, well, you're the one. You are the one. And there could be something about this guy, Daniel, that makes him particularly useful to the other vampires. And so there's interesting politicking about this, because everybody only basically gets one shot at having a progeny turn out. And it'd be neat if there were some that were kind of duds or were trying to outshine. And there'd be room for a really interesting supporting cast or other players to develop similar characters in similar situations who are approaching it from different perspectives.
What if we did a thing where we could tie in astrology to this somehow, like astronomical stuff. So there's a specific time, like basically a spawning time. Like you can't just become a vampire from the bite any time.
Right.
But it's a specific time, and it's the same for all vampires.
When the stars are right.
So there comes a moment, it could be even a century, where everybody gets a chance.
Yeah.
And that's when everyone kind of creates one new vampire, and that's all they can do. Maybe for 100 years or even longer, but let's say 100 years. So there's a whole lot riding on that one person that you choose to carry it on, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a child, because they'd want to choose someone who's just coming into the flower of adulthood. So this is 17, 18. It's that's considered to be the perfect time, right? Because the person can still be shaped. They're in their prime, which they're now going to be in forever. So this vampire has been watching this kid grow up
and get all sturdy and adventurous and motivated and competitive, somebody who wants to do well, go up in the world, distinguish himself from his siblings.
Yeah, I really like that. Maybe actually the adventurous thing, we could put something in his backstory, because that's again, it seems like a very YA thing. This is a thing I did when I was a kid that's now relevant to my character. Maybe he was somebody who signed up for a thing where he went on a trip or whatever and came to this guy's attention. That he wanted to get out of the small town, he wanted to leave,
be out in the world. And
you have to choose that, because maybe that's where some of the duds come from, is you turn somebody who doesn't want to go live in the larger world.
Yeah.
They're too tied to their home. So he's been chosen for his adventurousness and his desire to set himself apart. So he gets turned, but other people also in the area have been. All the vampires have created
kids
one
he
more.
grew up with.
Yeah, so that way you can have your mortal cast. Some of them have been turned now in this area and are kind of going to be whisked away. You could also do the thing where there's local legend, because maybe this would have happened 100 years ago.
And that would be fun.
Yeah.
You'd have some, wise old woman who's like, I know what's up with you kids. And that would be a fun character to have show up in the story as they're trying to negotiate the changes that are happening to them, and especially depending on the weaknesses or vulnerabilities for vampirism in this game. Are they immediately vulnerable to sunlight? Are they not immediately vulnerable to sunlight? What's up with holy water? There's all these great questions that would be new to the characters as well. And as they negotiate that, it would be fun. I think that could be a lot of fun.
Yeah. In terms of the weaknesses and their vampiric abilities, I think it would be good if they were able to develop them, move further in that direction, perhaps through feeding, so that it took a little bit of time and effort to kind of shape themselves up. And I also like the idea that perhaps you could make vampiric traits reflect some actual powers, but more so it would be things you have to train yourself to do. You can now be better, but for example, you wouldn't just become super strong, but you now have a greater capacity for strength, so you have to exercise. You have to build yourself up. So that's another reason he's chosen somebody dedicated who's already shown, because it's no use turning somebody who's then never going to do the work to become powerful.
Yeah.
So you gain money and influence and physical strength and intelligence. Through study, you can memorize things better, become wiser over time, so that now you have this pull of you are now my one progeny. You're my project for a century.
Yeah.
I want you to study. I want to take you places and show you things. I want to help you train, which means you have to leave the family behind, which this character may or may not want to do.
Yeah, they're graduating from high school. This is kind of when they would be making those sorts of decisions. Do I stay in my town? Do I go to a school far away? Am I going to join the army? What am I going to do with myself now that I'm growing up? And
that would be a great thing to throw into this character, is say that maybe with education there's a certain division of labor in this family. Maybe there's a family business, and then after they come out of school they're supposed to work for a while and help out, producing some money to send the other kids, and then they get to go to school, they get to go to college, where they don't really have the money to send back home.
Right.
You know, and then afterward, if they're professionals or whatever the plan is, that they can then help out a little that way because they've got all these kids to send through school.
Yeah, like Daniel could have maybe 1 or 2 older siblings and one who's still at the shop, like saving up some money to help defer the cost of them going to college, and one who's at college and is working there and trying to help minimize any needs they have for this big giant family. That would be neat.
And the thing could be like the guy who's embraced him or who's turned him into a vampire is saying, there is no time for this. Because, and this is the thing, you know, role-playing being, you know, it's a whole party. It's not just one person. You could play something like this solo, like maybe I can see a play-by-email thing or something like that. But typically you'd have a party. And so what I would like to see is this guy's like kind of a focal character, more so because like the first session would be him getting turned. And everybody else would play people who've been turned very recently, like within this year. But they've got like a little more experience and other mentors than him. And maybe he's like the most promising, like the most powerful vampire waited until the last moment and chose him. So now he's like playing catch up. So our time's up. I think this would be fun to play.
This could work.
I would play this, and it would be fun to come up with the other characters too, and like how they interact with Daniel. He's like the golden boy, and I like the idea of having a YA story where the person who's telling you that you're special and you're destined may not exactly an antagonist, but you have to question whether that whole myth of like making yourself the hero of your story is kind of a lie or something you may choose to give up. Maybe it's true about you, but you need to give it up because there are other things in life.
And also, you are destined to drink blood until the end of time. It's like glamorous creature of the night. I eat people. You know, there's questions there. There's valid questions there.
All right, cool. So that's it. Thank you.
Sure thing.